it's Mandy, and this video is about 10 things that you should think about before buying a rental property. The first 5 are all things that you need to inspect or are sort of more or less deal breakers for me, and then the other 5 are by no means deal breakers, but it's just a huge bonus if the property has those features because it means less maintenance up front and less maintenance in the future. You need to inspect the crawl space if the property has a crawl space. Now, I know that not every property is going to have a crawl space. A lot of them will have a slab foundation. That's okay. I do not mind slab foundations. I do prefer crawl spaces. It's going to make it easier to do plumbing repairs and air conditioning work, things like that. But with the crawl space, it can tell you a lot about the condition of the rest of the house and of the structure of the house. So go ahead and inspect the crawl space. Make sure that there's not a lot of moisture under there that can't be explained. Like if it's just rained a whole bunch and there's a little bit of dampness, that's probably okay and probably expected. And you can tell, like, if the wood is in good condition. You can see like the pillars and the structure, if everything's straight and there's not cracks and it doesn't look like it's shifted much over time, then that's going to tell you a lot about how well the house was built. Number 2, still talking about foundation and structure. But once you go into the house, this is even if the house has a slab foundation, you're going to want to look at the walls and make sure that there's not any like bulging, that they look visibly straight. Now, I understand that most walls, especially if a house was built 30, 50 years ago, the walls are going to not probably be straight or level, but visually they should look pretty straight. Make sure there's not big cracks, especially around doors and window frames. Make sure that the windows open and close correctly. That can be a sign that the house has settled a lot over time. Make sure that the doors are opening smoothly, and then just look for cracks like in the ceiling. I do think, some cracks are okay. That's just a sign of like normal settling with time. But any big cracks, or even if it's a small crack and you're concerned about it, go ahead and have it inspected because you do not want to have foundation problems. It's just an added expense and an added headache that's not typically going to pay you back, and it's not really going to be worth it. Number 3, location. If you've watched many YouTube videos about rental properties, then you have probably heard other people say you cannot change the location of the house. And that's true. You can do all the repairs, you can do the foundation work, but you cannot change the location of the house. And so just drive down the street, especially if you don't know the area very well, and make sure that the neighbors' houses look clean and tidy, that there's nothing suspicious going on. I always think it's kind of like a warning sign if there's no trespassing signs everywhere around the neighbor's house, if they have a bunch of junk in the yard, and it is kind of creepy when they come out of the house and stare at your car as it goes by. I've definitely had that happen, and I did not buy the house that was on that street that I was looking at. If I feel unsafe just going to look at the house, then how can I expect somebody else to feel safe living in the house? So do make sure that the neighborhood is safe. If you know the area, that's even better. If you know that it's generally pretty safe and there's not a lot of break-ins, that kind of thing. Yeah, and also, if it's by like a school, maybe not necessarily like right across from the school, but if it's close to a school or a golf course or a lake, like those are awesome, or a park, like those are things that are going to add value to your property. So just keep that in mind. And then the quality of the work within the house. I don't typically like to buy houses that have a lot of DIY type repairs. Now, the house that we bought this summer, the people who lived there had installed the laminate plank flooring themselves, and I could tell that it hadn't been done correctly. Like the seams were either separating or they were starting to kind of buckle in places, and I don't know if buckle's the right word, but like just jam together to where it wasn't flat anymore. And so going in, I knew, well, they installed this themselves, it's going to need to be replaced. So I knew like what the expense was there. But whenever there's a lot of DIY, to me, I get concerned with what I'm not seeing. So they did this, but what does it look like underneath? Usually if it's a small project, it's not a big deal. But you can buy a house, like just depending on where you're at, I could potentially buy a property that the people have built themselves and didn't even need really permits to do. I live in the South, out in the middle of nowhere in the country, so that's possible. And if I saw that, I would probably want to stay away, because you don't know if the people knew what they were doing, and you don't know what kind of cost you could incur from that later down the line. Just because it looks good on the outside doesn't mean that maybe there's not things that are covered up underneath. So if I'm at all concerned with the quality of the work, I would tend to stay away from the house. Number 5 is it's a simple air conditioning. I will not buy a house that doesn't have air conditioning in it. I do own one rental property that doesn't have central heat and air. It has window units, and that property has paid for itself. It's been a great rental property. The people who live there have lived there for 12 years, so that house is fine. My dad bought that house in 1997, and it's worth the same amount now that it was worth back then. So it just hasn't appreciated. I myself personally would not, with there being deals on the market, I would never go for one that doesn't have central heat and air at this point. I just think it's if I ever wanted to resell the house, it really is a must-have for most people. Even with renting, I wouldn't rent a house myself that didn't have central heat and air. So for me, that's just a deal breaker. Okay, so now on to the things that are bonus features for me. And number 6 is that the house has 2 bathrooms. This may not be true for your area, but for me, if the house has only 1 bathroom versus 2, I can charge more in rent for the house with 2 bathrooms. But if it has 3 bathrooms versus 2, I don't really see an increase in the amount of rent I get. But I do see an increase in the amount of maintenance that I would have. Just 3 bathrooms, that's a lot more chance for leaks and plumbing leaks and things like that. And the houses that I'm buying are typically built in the 70s, so we really are getting to the point in the property's lifespan that they are starting to have more plumbing issues and leaks. Number 7 is the construction material of the outside of the house. I really prefer that it be brick. Brick is just much less maintenance. You don't have to worry about painting it. And painting the exterior of a house is pretty expensive, and it doesn't last. I mean, I think probably 10 years is a good lifespan for paint. Just probably also depending on how harsh the weather is in your area. But I think about 10 years. You guys can correct me on that if you want. I have only been managing rental properties or having my own rental properties for 2 years. So I haven't seen a paint job from its conception to the end of it yet. The number 8, the next thing, is a metal roof. If the house has a metal roof, that's a huge bonus for me, because metal roofs just last longer. They don't need hardly any maintenance or upkeep. Okay, so number 9, and you guys might think that this is a little bit of a strange one, but it's kind of causing the most reoccurring maintenance problems for me. And that is having a large wooden deck or porch. I am trying not to buy properties that have wooden decks and porches now. If it has a concrete patio, that's great. If it doesn't have a deck, that's great too. I think for a house that you're going to purchase yourself to live in, if you want a deck, that's fantastic. Personally, I would like to have a deck too. But for a rental property, I just don't want to have to put the maintenance in every couple years to seal the deck and to stain the deck and to replace the boards that rot. We live in an area where there is a lot of rain and it's always humid, and so these wooden decks just do not hold up. And unfortunately, most of the houses in our area seem to have a big deck in the back. And it's not something that you can just remove from the house, because a lot of times it has doors, well, all of the time, it has doors opening up onto the deck. And if you take the deck off, you are taking away some of the value of the property, but it doesn't increase the rent, and it's just maintenance that I'm having to put into the house every few years. And when you have, 20 houses and they all have wooden decks, and that's just a lot of headache and a lot of maintenance, and I would prefer not to have to deal with it. So the last bonus thing, if I'm looking to purchase a property and it already has hardwood floors or tile, that is a huge bonus to me. Those two, like, really high quality floorings seem to last for a really long time, even in a rental. Hardwood and tile, it just seems like it can put up with most things that a tenant can throw at it and remain in pretty good condition. And so that's always a bonus for me. Okay, so those were my 10 things. Obviously, that list is not all inclusive. I'm sure there are a ton of things I missed. Go ahead and leave what you guys look for when you're going to purchase another rental property. Leave those things down in the comments, and I'm sure we can make a part 2 to this video. Also, some exciting news. I am closing on 7 more rental properties next week. It is really exciting, but it's also kind of a big mess. So I'll make a video over that after I close. Anyway, guys, y'all have a good day, and I will see you next time. Bye.